Hello, and welcome to Brand Clarity by Visions2images, where we focus on strategy and business development for entrepreneurs at all different levels through branding and digital marketing techniques. Susie Liberatore is the founder and art director of Visions2images Creative Services, LLC. For the last decade, she has personally been instrumental in bridging gaps between the global digital market and neighborhood locations for some of the biggest brands around. Growth is possible for even a single location with the right professional branding techniques and Susie's signature strategies of Visions2images. Stand out from your competitors and bring your visions to life while watching your sales skyrocket. Your host for this is Susie Liberatore, owner of Visions2images. Hello, everybody. Today I have Karrie Charrington on the podcast with Karrie Marie Consulting, and she's a Pinterest strategist and expert. And I'm super excited because Pinterest has always been on the back burner for me. It's always changing. It's great for some people, but it's totally one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to learn it. I don't want to deal with it. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started.
Well, thank you for having me. I am a Pinterest strategist. I didn't always start out that way. I actually started out as a blogger when I came to the online space and had these grand plans of making lots of money as a blogger, and then realized how long and slow it was going to take, and how dedicated you had to be. I mean, this was 5 years ago, and I think you were still required to publish like 2 and 3 times a week. And as a stay-at-home mom, I homeschool my kids, no time. So that pressure of trying to create blog posts just didn't work. But the good thing is that I had learned what a virtual assistant was, because the bloggers, they don't do it all themselves. They have a virtual assistant. And so I came from a marketing background. And so I thought, I could do that. And so I jumped on to be a virtual assistant. I got up and running pretty quick just because I had skills. Mm-hmm. I think I like a lot of people, started out as a general VA, but I had already learned through starting my blog how to upload and deal with things on WordPress. And then I used Pinterest like a lot of bloggers to advertise my blog. And so I, jumped into the VA world. It was a couple of years later where I strategically chose to niche to Pinterest just because I saw what it can do for someone's business and how strategic it is. And they always say, the riches are in the niches, and niche down, and, all these things. And so that too, coupled with Pinterest ads. I mean, even now Pinterest ads are still, newer-ish. I mean, they've been around for a couple of years, but so I decided to do that as well. And I spend my time, a lot of time, educating people on how to use Pinterest, because we use it personally, I think, is where most women use it for finding recipes, how to decorate, how to organize. I use it as a homeschooling mom to find printables. And I mean, there's so many printables for kids, but people don't get how does it work for business? And so I spend a lot of time educating on that.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I feel like even though I have the branding and marketing background when I first started my business, I feel like everybody starts as a VA for whatever reason. So I totally understand that. I started off as a VA, and then I was like, why can't I charge more for design, for marketing, for all of those things that people need? Because I'm not a VA that's just going to sit there and post or create some graphics. Like, there's got to be more strategic stuff going on. So that's when it was like, okay, well, what's the next thing? Because I feel like VAs, it's easy for a VA to sell in a sense, because everybody needs a VA, but where do you draw the line? Where do you come in with your strengths and weaknesses? And that's where I kind of was like, yeah, I can do way more than this. VAs are great, don't get me wrong, but there's a point where we all start, and then we find our strengths and our weaknesses, and then we go off, like you said, and niche down and figure things out. And it's funny you talked about blogging as well, because blogging, I mean, I still blog to this day. And there are some things for my podcast, I repurpose it and stuff. But as far as blogging goes, yeah, you can't make a lot of money necessarily, but it builds that foundation, and it builds that awareness. And I don't use Pinterest. I stopped using Pinterest about a year or 2 ago because I was over it. And I don't even use it for personal anymore, because I don't like to cook. I'm not like that handy mom that can be like doing all of the things, right? Like if I want inspiration for design, I will go find it on the Google rather than on Pinterest. So I stopped using Pinterest because I thought it was a distraction. So, I mean, maybe I should go back to it someday, but it's just one of those things where I reevaluated my business and didn't think that there was much coming from Pinterest. And I probably did it wrong too, granted, but I just didn't think that there was enough like return on investment for it at the time because I was doing it all myself. You know what I mean? So that's where you have to come in and say, okay, do I want to try it and outsource it? Because I'm a huge component of outsourcing. I don't really want to do all the things, especially if I'm not good at it, you know? So I stopped Pinterest.
Well, and who wants to learn all the things, right? I mean, like Facebook algorithms, Instagram algorithms, Pinterest. I mean, you have to be on top of all of that. So if you can outsource to an expert.
Totally. It's always changing. So yeah, I totally agree with all of that. So what are you most excited about right now?
I am most excited about Pinterest ads because if you remember, like before the election, and then also like during the Black Lives Matter whole thing, like in the summertime, like, you know, there were people boycotting Facebook, especially before the elections. They were shutting ad accounts down like crazy, you know, to stop false information and what have you. And so that opened the eyes of a lot of entrepreneurs that are running, you know, their SLO funnels. And I mean, their whole business is based on Facebook ads, and that faucet of turning on, watching money come, turning it off, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, I think that's what people think Facebook ads are. It's like a slot machine or an ATM machine that you just turn on and money comes. And when that got shut down, people are like, oh my God, that's like a pretty darn good income stream that I just lost while you're sitting there fighting with Facebook to try to get your ad account back. And so a lot of my education has changed to let's all not put our eggs in Zuckerberg's basket.
That's my philosophy too, right? I'll tell you a short story and then you can finish. I got kicked out of Facebook, like locked out, couldn't get in at all. And I would have clients' pages, my pages, everybody's pages, and I got locked out. And I was like, okay, well, this is why we can't put all of our eggs in one basket, because if Facebook goes down, if Facebook locks you out, if Facebook cancels your ad, like whatever, anybody can do anything on any platform. So you never want to put your eggs all in one basket. 100% agree. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no. And so, my business has really picked up because of people like, oh my God, I gotta diversify. And to your point too, like how you had said on how you Google everything, Pinterest has changed. Like I remember, I don't know, 8 or so years ago, maybe like you would search, because I had done, I had been on, one of the first people on Facebook, had a Facebook account, found it a distraction.
Me too.
And closed it down. Well, then when you searched on Google, you would notice that Facebook results would come.
Absolutely.
And then you had to have a Facebook account to see what information they were doing. So I'm like, okay, well, then I got back on Facebook. And so it has changed. Now, as you search on Google, if you notice next time, a lot of the results that come up are Pinterest, and they direct you to Pinterest.
I think that's interesting, because I kind of do agree with that. Sometimes, not necessarily if I'm looking for business stuff, but if I'm looking for, like, if I'm looking for a specific business, I don't really see them coming up in a Pinterest search. Whereas if I'm searching for something specific, like marketing campaigns or marketing templates or whatever, just to get inspiration, there's always something for Pinterest. And I don't have my accounts, so I'm like, oh, I don't want to go on Pinterest. But I see it coming, because I feel like if I go on Pinterest, it's going to be a rabbit hole. So I definitely agree that it is showing up in the search engines when you kind of have something specific that you're searching for. And it might not even need to be too specific, but it's specific enough that people can find it and search it. You know what I mean?
Well, Google scrapes the database of Pinterest, and as do a lot of search engines. And so that's, why in Pinterest, there's something called Pinterest SEO, which is crosses over with like the Google SEO. It's not exactly the exact same, but it's the same concept of the whole search engine, because Pinterest is a search engine and not a social media like it's grouped in to be. But so that's why it shows up in Google, and more niches, like, I mean, as you mentioned, like maybe some things more for business, like branding or templates, like Canva templates are huge. There are certain niches that are certainly more popular.
I forget what I was looking for the other day. I was on Google looking for something. It had to have been something about marketing, and it just kept giving me Pinterest results. And I was like, I just want to see something. So I think that's pretty huge and important, and it's interesting. And I don't know about Pinterest SEO. Like, is that a new feature on there, or has it always been there?
No, well, it's also called the keyword search. And so, how you find something on Pinterest is you go to that top search bar and start typing in. So similar to Google, like if you start typing in a word, and then there's like a drop down of additional searches to kind of help you find what you're looking for. Those keywords are what people are using. And so oftentimes people who start Pinterest don't really pay that much attention to that.
Totally.
But that's how you get found. And so if you're not using the words that people are searching on, well, then you're not going to show up in the search, and then Pinterest isn't going to work for you. And then you're going to be like, oh, well, Pinterest doesn't work. Well, you didn't. That's like the most important thing in order to get found is to use those keywords again and again.
So how do you justify what keywords to use?
Well, there's a tool that Pinterest came out with called trends.pinterest.com.
Oh, okay.
That's one tool. It's not available worldwide. It is like US, UK, Australia. Okay. It's not the entire Pinterest database, but it is a good place to start, because Pinterest, over the last couple of years, they've taken away like statistics and or analytics. And so people would just like find the highest stuff and like just go with that. And so now they've taken that away as far as searching. And so one of the places to start is the trends, because it will tell you over a year, like it's easier to use an example of like seasonal things. Right. So if you did like back to school, it's going to show you over 12 months. If you typed in back to school, when does it trend? Well, it doesn't trend in February, right? So it's you can see the graph. It's going to start ramping up like 3 months before, like before back to school time. And so then they have related searches, and then they have underneath it, they have like pins that you should look at. And so if Pinterest is putting it in front of you saying you should look at these, that's an indication that those are popular pins. And then you just kind of look at, well, what are the titles of the pins they're using? Do you have content that's similar? Could you add a different angle to that particular search topic or whatever? So that's one way.
Hey, let's stop for just 1 second during this podcast episode. I know you're so excited to get back and listen, but I wanted to chat with you and talk about how we really work with businesses. What we really do is we dive in and we ask so many questions. We go through a series of questionnaires and extensive research to really help you get a clear, identifiable plan of action that needs to happen for your business. If you want to hear more about this, go to Visions2images.com, click the Contact Us button, and we will be happy to set up a time to chat more.
And then the other thing is when you do search on Pinterest, starting at the top left and the top, those are like the most popular trending pins at the time. And so again, you look for a topic, look at the pins, see what are the titles, what type of content is important. So I like to use Pinterest actually from a content planning standpoint to know, in a particular topic, what's trending.
Totally. Right. Because there's so much always happening. I mean, that's the same for any social media, digital marketing thing, where we kind of have to adapt. Even if you are, let's say you're a flooring company, even if you're specific with that flooring, like we're working on some spring makeover stuff. In the wintertime, we did like the 12 days of Christmas, like even little simple stuff like that is like a no-brainer, can really help create different content We don't really use Pinterest for that one, but that could be a great example too. So
exactly.
What my last question for you before we get into our last question is how often should somebody post on Pinterest?
Daily. I use Tailwind, and that has changed. I mean, it used to be that you would pin your content and then you would pin, there was this magical number somewhere that came about that you had to pin 20% of your stuff and 80% of other people's. And so that was like a couple years ago. Don't know where it came from. Pinterest never confirmed it. It was like one of those just magical things that showed up. And I mean, literally you can, I use Tailwind as a tool because who doesn't like to automate?
Totally, 100%.
And so I pin every day. I pin like 4 or 5 pins minimum, which are my pins. And for a beginner, like kind of actually going back to like how you were saying, like Pinterest might not be worth your time. I mean, Pinterest is typically not a platform that I suggest beginners start on. It's, you should work on Instagram, Facebook
totally
first, and then add that additionally. I started just pinning more of my own stuff and less of other people's. And I have blogger clients who have been blogging for 10 years. I can pin like 20 pins a day and it's all their content. So pin what benefits you for your business. And so that has changed over the years because it's like, oh, you always had to pin someone else's. There is something within Tailwind called Tailwind Tribes, where it's, it's similar to the old Facebook groups, which are kind of dead and dying. Or not Facebook groups, Pinterest groups, where everyone shares each other's. And so I share enough because, you are supposed to share their content. So it's like you upload 5 pins, you share 5 pins. So I share the minimum of what I'm supposed to share, but the goal is to get my content seen. And so that's, I concentrate on that. And if you're newer and you don't have a ton of content, even like, 2-3 pins a day is still getting in front of people. You can, Pinterest doesn't pinning and repinning the same old pin like it used to. Like if you pinned one pin, it went viral, you could continually repin it. They want new content, which could be in the form of technically like a new blog post or a new podcast or whatever. But you can also make new images for the same blog post. So one blog post that I have, I make 12 pins and I make sure that it's rotating and it gets pinned out over the year. And so you can create content. It's repurposing content at that point. So you're not
right
on that whole blogging hamster wheel of content creation. You can,
for sure.
You can get more bang for your buck by creating more pins and
totally.
So.
I agree with that 100%. I'm all about repurposing and automation and whatever I can do to make my life easier. So
yep, 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that because Pinterest has changed. Maybe someday
it has.
My last question now, this is the last one now for sure, is what advice would you give somebody if they were either just starting off either with Pinterest or entrepreneur world? What would you give them to kind of get going?
Work on your mindset from day one because it is 100% a mind game. And so like how you had said where, we both were starting out as VAs, and I remember part of my education was like, you go into these groups and they'll be like, I want a VA who's going to create me a logo, going to build my website, gonna do this. And I'm like, well, okay, a VA is not someone who's going to build you a website. You need a website builder person. Absolutely. You need a branding person to create brand colors and logos and create that.
I love it.
And so it's a mindset shift because I think a couple 5 years ago when I started, people virtual assistant was still new. And so, I think that you should get out of a VA title in the beginning is good, but you need to get out of it. You're going to max at a certain point because someone's not going to pay you $100 an hour to be a VA. You need special skills. And so if you have those special skills, show up and be that branding person or website designer, and that all comes up, I think, with mindset, because as you start charging more, it's like you have money mindset issues, showing up issues, all these different things that come with mindset. And
right.
So
I think the biggest thing is when you realize like you don't charge VA prices anymore, when you really niche down and specialize, and you're like, I don't think people are going to pay for this. And you're constantly beating your head up against the wall, trying to find people who will pay or whatever, or shifting it, like, because so many people were used to what you were doing before. But that's where like the mindset comes in, like, your worth, you have to scale up to it, and you have to take care of yourself. Right. And the other thing with VA, like when I was doing VA work many, many years ago, I was doing, I don't even know what it was called, but it was like putting together like giveaways and coordinating, like it almost like a PR, like reaching out to people saying, hey, would you like to collaborate? Hey, would you like to do this? Would you like to do a giveaway with us? Whatever. And I was doing it for clients, and it was not my strengths. And I would have mistakes. I mean, we all have mistakes. And there were just gaps in the holes. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. So understanding this is not what you want to do, as well as figuring out what your strengths are and really niching in and knowing your worth, is so important and so critical. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the learning curve of, starting out as a VA. I mean, I did the same thing. You just kind of like who's ever willing to pay you, you're going to do it. Or like, I've had long-term retainer clients, and they love you and they trust you, and you're doing the one thing. And then I remember this one client asked me like, hey, could you learn some Plero? And it was all like a funnel based thing, like Kajabi or anything. Right. And so I'm like, well, I already know the concept. And, I'd use ClickFunnels. I'm like, I know funnels. I'm like, how hard can it be? Right. And to me, it was like the worst platform ever. I just thought it was confusing. And so nothing against some player. This was like 3-4 years ago. But it was like at that point, I'm like, I already know ConvertKit and ClickFunnels and, this and that. And I am not learning one more dang software. And so, you get to design the business you want. So why are you forcing yourself? I mean, I think there's a point where, and it depends for everybody and the money situation, because we all need money to live and whatever. But, I took things because it was like, okay, I needed the money. But then when I finally got to that point of, okay, now I'm steady, got good retainer clients, then your mindset changes and you start looking at your business as like, okay, well, I am the CEO. Yeah. Is it something I want to, do I want to create an agency and hire that piece off? Is it something that I need to do or want to do? And it was like, I don't want to do this. And so as soon as that was over, that was like a awakening, like, okay, I don't have to learn all of the things. And, then because too, I didn't like fire all my clients and then become Pinterest focused. Right. I did, there's that transition of, okay, as the retainer clients dropped off and I picked up more Pinterest clients because my website changed and my focus changed. And you go through that. And it's just, some people go through it faster and some people, absolutely. All you can do is advise people. And so it's, sometimes it takes you 6 months. Sometimes it takes you 2 years or 5 years. Right. I mean,
well, sometimes people might be happy with where they are too. So it's all
exactly.
It all depends on what you are. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some great tips and sharing your story. We will put your link in the bio, and thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening in on this episode today. Please make sure to check out the links from your guest and Visions to Images to learn more about each other. It takes a village, as you know, so connect and grow with one another together. Thank you so much for listening.